What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your co-host, Donovan Quick, and the Dolphins actually made a fantastic hire yesterday, hiring former Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik to be our senior pass game coordinator. Quick little rundown on Bobby Slowik. He is the brother to our pass game specialist and defensive backs coach, Ryan Slowik, and he was also just recently fired from the Texans after an underwhelming season. However, he was dealt with just a poor offensive line and so many injuries to the wide receiver position. And, you know, before the last couple of years, it was kind of normal for a quarterback to hit that sophomore slump. And CJ Stroud certainly did that. So I don't really think he was deserving of being fired. I thought that was a really harsh move to make by the Texans, especially coming off of a year where, I mean, he was a head coach candidate a year ago. Like, that is wild. 1 year ago, he was a head coach candidate, and now he's not even going to be an offensive coordinator in the league. It's crazy to me. I think this is a fantastic hire. Now, do I think that he is going to make our pass game so much better? Do I think he's going to dealing with having to be the head coach of the entire team? You know, having those guys that have called plays in your ear, given he has Darrell Bevell as a QB coach. Frank Smith has never called plays. He's our offensive coordinator, but you have those two guys in place. And on top of that, it kind of prepares our staff for in-house promotions, because Darrell Bevell could become an offensive coordinator like any day. He had 3 interviews this year. I think he had 3 interviews last year. He's bound to become an offensive coordinator somewhere. Frank Smith has had head coaching interviews. He didn't have one this offseason, but he had several last offseason, and the offseason before that he had several interviews. So we're kind of preparing almost for like that in-house transition, but also Mike McDaniel needs to get better with his play calling, and I think Bobby Slowik, you know, mixed with Darrell Bevell, guys that have called plays before in this league and had success calling plays, can help grow Mike with his play calling. And even if he needs to give away play calling, now you have a couple of people that you can trust to do so. And I really like having that versatility in there, especially in the coaching staff. And I do think that he's going to be a great addition to this staff. Now, it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird because there's still staff positions to fill in the NFL. The Saints, particularly, Kellen Moore is going to the Saints, and he's going to have his staff. So we don't know if anybody's going to get poached just yet. Hopefully not. We've been lucky enough to keep everybody on staff. We didn't lose Frank Smith. We didn't lose Darrell Bevell. We didn't lose Anthony Weaver. Those were kind of like the big 3 in my opinion. And we wanted to keep that kind of there. And I really liked it. I really do. I do really like this coaching staff. I felt like they coached the crap out of the team that we had last year. The personnel just was not there. And if you want to tell me otherwise, I'm sorry, you're just wrong. You know, Tyreek Hill was playing hurt the entire season. Waddle, he was there. He wasn't really hurt, but he wasn't really involved because, well, Tua got hurt. And it's like, it's crazy to think about. He still had like 700, 800 yards. Crazy to think about. And then you go and you go further in. It's like our offensive line this entire year is basically our offensive line at the end of last year, which was all backups. So offensive line definitely needs to be addressed. Playing with how it's funny at times where I was like, you know, the offensive line, you know, they played pretty decent this game, played pretty decent that game, blah, blah, blah. But then you go against good defenses and you really see how bad they are. And you can hide it in certain ways, which the Dolphins did with a quick pass game, with, you know, screens and motions and everything else that the Dolphins have done. And you really just see that where we went from an offensive powerhouse at the beginning or most of last year to just really bad offensively. And you're kidding yourself if you don't think the offensive line is a huge part of that. And then defensive side of the ball, I mean, yeah, we had Jalen Ramsey, whoop-de-doo. He does not look as good as he used to be. Kendall Fuller sucks. Javon Holland had a really down year. Jordan Poyer sucks. He's washed. Our linebackers, they played pretty decent. Our defensive line, we have no edge rushers, but we somehow still were competitive at that position. So coaching was a huge part of that, and I got to give credit where credit is due. Like, the coaching staff did a phenomenal job given the personnel, and kind of like what Omar Kelly was saying in all of his articles, is that the Dolphins spent so much money, bringing in stars like Jalen Ramsey, like Tyreek Hill, like Teron Armstead, like Bradley Chubb, and paying them so much money and kicking it down the road by restructuring contracts and just the way they structured the contracts. And it wasn't feasible to keep doing it. And kind of like the Rams, but the Rams, they rebuilt completely, but they knew the check was going to come, and they let it happen. They won their Super Bowl. They let it happen, and the roster went down to 0, and then they built it back up through the draft. So I think that's at the point the Dolphins are trying to do. We're going to have a phenomenal draft this offseason, as well as signing some key free agents while trying not to kick the money down the road. Given this is Greer and McDaniel's last shot at really trying to save their jobs, so they might legitimately put us in a hole financially and with certain players this offseason that we might not be able to come back for a couple years from. So we have to be prepared for that. Hopefully it does not happen, but we have to be prepared for it. All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining me. Deuces.